When someone pulls back, the instinct is to assume the worst. We tell ourselves a story that distance equals disinterest, silence equals indifference, and space means we don't matter. But here's the truth most people miss. Love doesn't always show up loudly. Sometimes it shows up quietly, awkwardly, even clumsily, especially when someone doesn't know how to fully express what they feel. And if you're paying attention, there are signs that speak far louder than constant texts or grand declarations. One of the most overlooked signs of love is consistency, not intensity, not fireworks, but reliability. If he shows up in the same way over time, even when life gets busy or stressful, that's not accidental. Love isn't about being available every second. It's about being emotionally steady. If you can predict his care even when he's distant, that stability is meaningful. Then there are the efforts that don't ask for applause. He might not announce them, but he adjusts his behavior for you. He checks in before making decisions. He makes space for you in a life that was already full. These quiet efforts often go unnoticed because they don't look dramatic, but they require intention, and intention is rooted in care. Pay attention to how he listens. A man in love absorbs more than words. He remembers how you take your coffee, what stresses you out, what makes you light up. Even if he struggles to express emotion, his memory holds proof of how much you matter. People don't remember details about things they don't value. Another powerful sign is protection, not control, but consideration. He thinks before he speaks. He avoids actions that could hurt you or jeopardize what you share. That restraint comes from emotional investment. When someone cares deeply, they don't want to risk the bond they're building. Love also reveals itself through vulnerability, especially in someone who seems distant. He may not pour his heart out, but he lets you see cracks others don't. He shares fears, doubts, or moments of uncertainty. That openness, however brief, is trust in motion. Listen closely to how he talks about the future. It might be subtle, almost accidental. A we instead of I. A mention of something months from now that includes you. These aren't slips of the tongue, they're glimpses of where his heart already is. And finally, understand this, distance doesn't always mean disinterest. Often, it means fear. Fear of getting it wrong, fear of losing control, fear of needing someone too much. When a man is emotionally distant but still present, consistent and caring, it's often because he feels more than he knows how to handle. Love isn't always loud, sometimes it whispers. And when you stop looking for constant reassurance and start noticing consistent intention, you'll see that distance doesn't erase love. It sometimes reveals it in its most honest form. Emotional consistency matters more than constant communication. Yet this is the place where most people get it wrong. We live in a world that teaches us to measure love by frequency, how often he texts, how quickly he replies, how many hours a day he gives you his attention. But love doesn't live in volume, it lives in reliability. Someone can message you all day and still disappear when it matters, and someone else can go quiet for hours or even days yet remain emotionally present in the ways that truly count. Emotional consistency shows up in patterns, not moments. It's the way he treats you when he's tired, stressed, busy, or unsure of himself. It's whether his care drops off the moment life gets inconvenient, or whether it stays steady even when his energy doesn't. A man who is emotionally consistent may not always know how to express himself perfectly, but you don't feel like you're constantly starting from zero with him. There's a baseline of respect, warmth, and intention that doesn't vanish just because he's overwhelmed. This is especially important with someone who seems distant. Distance can be misleading because it often reflects how someone manages pressure, not how deeply they feel. Some people retreat inward when they're processing emotions. They don't talk more, they talk less. But emotional consistency means that even during that distance, he doesn't become careless with you. He doesn't punish you with silence. He doesn't leave you guessing where you stand every time his mood shifts. You still feel considered. Consistency also creates emotional safety. When someone's behavior is predictable in its kindness, your nervous system relaxes. You're not analyzing every interaction, searching for hidden meaning. You're not addicted to highs and lows. Instead, you feel grounded. That steadiness is often far more romantic than dramatic gestures because it signals long-term potential. It says, This person is capable of showing up again and again. Another key piece is alignment between words and actions. An emotionally consistent man doesn't overpromise in moments of closeness and then disappear afterward. What he says matches what he does over time. Even if he's not expressive, his actions tell a clear story. He follows through. He checks back in. He doesn't make you feel foolish for trusting him. If you're always chasing reassurance, that's usually not love. It's uncertainty. Emotional consistency removes the need to chase because you're not constantly afraid of losing him. And when someone offers you that steadiness, even quietly, it's one of the strongest indicators that what he feels runs deeper than surface level attraction, deeper than temporary excitement, deeper than the need for validation in the moment. He makes subtle efforts that don't demand attention, and this is where love often hides when someone isn't naturally expressive. Not everyone shows care in obvious or dramatic ways. Some people love quietly, through actions so small they're easy to miss, unless you slow down and really observe. These efforts aren't designed to impress you or win approval. They exist simply because you matter to him. Subtle effort looks like adjustment. He shifts his routine to make space for you without announcing it. He remembers when you're busy and doesn't add pressure. He checks in at moments that matter to you, not because he was told to, but because he noticed. These actions don't come with a spotlight. He doesn't point them out or expect praise for them, which is exactly why they're meaningful. Real care doesn't need an audience. When someone is emotionally invested, their awareness changes. He notices your energy, your tone, the things that affect you. He might send a message at a specific time because he knows that's when you'll need it most. He might avoid certain behaviors because he knows they'd hurt you, even if you never explicitly asked him to stop. That level of consideration requires emotional presence, not constant conversation. Subtle effort also shows up in restraint. He doesn't push when you're overwhelmed. He doesn't make everything about his needs. He gives you room without withdrawing his care. This balance is hard for people who are only casually interested. They either demand attention or disappear. Someone who cares deeply but struggles with expression often finds this middle ground, staying connected without forcing intensity. These quiet actions are easy to dismiss if you're only looking for obvious signs. If you've been taught that love should be loud, you might overlook the man who simply shows up in consistent, understated ways. But subtle effort is often more sustainable than grand gestures. Anyone can be impressive for a moment. It takes real intention to be thoughtful over time. There's also a humility in subtle effort. He's not trying to prove his value or secure your approval. He's acting from a place of internal motivation, not fear of losing you. That's a powerful indicator of genuine feeling. When someone is doing things because they want your life to feel easier, safer, or lighter, that's emotional investment in its purest form. If you pay attention, these small efforts create a pattern. You start to notice that he anticipates your needs, supports your emotional world in quiet ways, and stays considerate even when no one is watching. Love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives like a steady hand on your back, guiding you forward without ever asking to be seen. He listens deeply, even when he doesn't say much. And this kind of listening is rare because it requires presence rather than performance. Many people listen just long enough to respond, to fix, or to redirect the conversation back to themselves. But when someone is in love, their attention shifts. They're not waiting for their turn to talk. They're absorbing who you are. Even in silence, there is focus. Deep listening shows up in how he responds later, not necessarily in the moment. He may not react with big emotional statements, but days or weeks later, you'll notice he brings something up that you mentioned in passing. A concern you shared casually becomes something he checks on. A dream you talked about once reappears in conversation. This isn't coincidence. It's evidence that your words landed somewhere meaningful. This kind of listening also means he hears what you don't say. He notices when your energy changes, when your excitement dims, when your voice sounds different. He may ask gentle questions or simply stay close instead of pushing for explanations. That sensitivity is often misunderstood as emotional distance because it's quiet, but it's actually attentiveness without pressure. When someone listens deeply, they create emotional safety. You feel less judged and less rushed. You don't have to perform or explain yourself perfectly. Even if he doesn't always know how to respond, his willingness to stay present communicates care. He's saying, without words, that your inner world matters enough to sit with, not solve. Deep listening also influences behavior. He adjusts based on what he's learned about you. He avoids triggering topics, supports your boundaries, and respects your vulnerabilities. These shifts happen naturally, not because you demanded them, but because he internalized what you shared. That kind of adaptation doesn't come from surface-level attraction. It comes from emotional investment. For someone who seems distant, listening can be their primary love language. They may struggle to articulate feelings, but their attention is unwavering. Silence in this case isn't emptiness. It's processing. It's care moving inward before it comes back out as action. There's also courage in listening deeply because it requires letting your guard down. When he truly listens, he's allowing himself to be affected by you. Your experiences shape his understanding, and your emotions influence his choices. That level of openness is vulnerable even if it doesn't look dramatic. If you notice that he remembers what matters to you, responds thoughtfully over time, and adjusts his behavior in ways that reflect your emotional truth, you're witnessing deep listening in action. It's not flashy and it's not always verbal, but it's one of the clearest signs that someone isn't just hearing you, they're holding you in their mind and heart long after the conversation ends. His actions protect the connection, not just his comfort, and this is one of the most revealing indicators of real emotional investment. When someone is only thinking about themselves, their choices are guided by ease, convenience, and immediate gratification. But when a man genuinely cares, his decision-making starts to include you, even when that requires effort, restraint, or discomfort on his part. Protecting the connection means he thinks before he acts. He doesn't say things recklessly just to release his own emotions if he knows they might hurt you. He considers the impact of his words, not because he's walking on eggshells, but because the bond matters to him. That kind of thoughtfulness doesn't come from obligation. It comes from valuing what you share. You'll see this protection in moments of tension. Instead of escalating conflict to win an argument, he tries to preserve respect. He may take space to cool off rather than saying something he can't take back. Even if he struggles with communication, there's an underlying effort to avoid damaging the relationship. Someone who doesn't care about the connection doesn't bother with that level of self-control. This also shows up in the boundaries he keeps with others. He doesn't flirt carelessly or put himself in situations that would clearly undermine your trust. Not because you demanded it, but because he doesn't want to jeopardize what he has with you. That awareness reflects emotional loyalty long before any formal labels are discussed. Protecting the connection often means choosing the long term over the short term. He might delay his own desires, adjust his schedule, or make compromises that aren't immediately rewarding because he's thinking beyond the moment. Love shifts someone's time horizon. It moves them from what do I want right now to what supports what we're building. Even in uncertainty, his behavior remains considerate. If he's unsure about his feelings or the future, he doesn't string you along with false promises just to keep access to you. He tries to be honest without being cruel. That balance is difficult, and when someone attempts it, it's because they respect your emotional well-being. Another important sign is repair. When he makes a mistake, he doesn't dismiss it or minimize your feelings. He tries to fix what was damaged. Repair is protection in action. It shows that the relationship itself has value worth restoring, not something disposable. If you look closely, you'll notice that his choices consistently aim to keep the connection intact. Even when he's flawed, imperfect, or emotionally guarded, there's a quiet effort to care for the bond you share. And when someone protects the connection rather than prioritizing their own comfort, it's because losing that connection would matter more to them than the inconvenience of showing up with integrity. He remembers small details that others overlook, and this is one of the most intimate forms of emotional attention. Memory is selective, people natural. They remember what they value, what moves them, and what feels important enough to store. When a man recalls the little things about you, it's rarely accidental. It's the result of genuine interest and emotional presence. even if he doesn't express it in obvious ways. These details are often insignificant on the surface. The way you take your tea, a song you mentioned once, the name of someone who stresses you out, the date of something that matters to you. None of these are dramatic, yet they carry emotional weight because they signal that he was fully tuned in when you shared them. He didn't just hear you, he kept you with him. Remembering small details also means he sees you as an individual, not just a role in his life. You're not interchangeable. You're not just someone he talks to when it's convenient. Your preferences, patterns, and experiences register in his mind, shaping how he interacts with you. That kind of awareness creates a sense of being known, which is one of the deepest human needs. For someone who seems distant, memory often becomes the bridge between silence and care. He may not always articulate affection, but his recall reveals that you occupy mental and emotional space. When he brings up something you forgot you even mentioned, it can feel surprising because it contradicts the idea that distance equals disengagement. This kind of remembering also influences behavior. He avoids things you dislike without being reminded. He leans into things that make you feel comfortable. He adjusts plans based on what he knows about you. These shifts happen quietly without explanation, but they're rooted in attentiveness that only develops when someone is emotionally invested. There's also vulnerability in remembering. When someone holds on to details about you, they're allowing you to matter to them. They're opening themselves up to being affected by your moods, your joys, and your struggles. That emotional openness can be intimidating, which is why some people express it indirectly through memory rather than words. Small details create emotional continuity. Even when you're not together or not talking, those details keep the connection alive in his mind. You're present in his daily life through the things he remembers, and that presence shapes how he thinks, feels, and acts. Love doesn't always announce itself through big declarations. Sometimes it reveals itself through quiet moments when you realize someone has been paying attention all along, holding pieces of you with care and intention, even when they didn't know how to say it out loud. He shows vulnerability in indirect but meaningful ways, and this is often misunderstood because vulnerability doesn't always look like emotional speeches or open confessions. For many people, especially those who have learned to protect themselves, vulnerability is expressed cautiously. It slips out in fragments, in moments of honesty that aren't announced but quietly offered. When a man is in love yet emotionally guarded, these moments matter more than grand declarations. Indirect vulnerability might sound like him admitting uncertainty, sharing a fear about the future, or revealing something he struggles with when he normally keeps things light. He may not frame it as an emotional revelation, but the fact that he lets you see parts of him that are unpolished and unresolved is significant. People don't expose their weak spots to those they don't trust. You may notice that he opens up during unexpected moments. A late-night conversation, a quiet car ride, or a casual comment that carries more weight than it seems. These are not accidents. They happen when he feels safe enough to let his guard down, even briefly. That safety is created by emotional connection, not convenience. 5U. Vulnerability also appears in how he asks for understanding rather than approval. He may explain why he needs space, why certain situations overwhelm him, or why he reacts the way he does. This isn't an excuse. It's an invitation. He's letting you into his internal world so you can understand him, not just judge him. That kind of openness requires courage. For someone who seems distant, indirect vulnerability is often the only way they know how to express depth. Direct emotional exposure may feel risky or unfamiliar, so they offer it in pieces, testing whether it's safe to be seen. Each small admission is a step toward closeness, even if it doesn't look dramatic. Another subtle form of vulnerability is allowing you to influence him. When he adjusts his perspective based on something you shared, or when your opinion genuinely matters to him, he's surrendering a bit of control. He's allowing your presence to shape his inner world, and that's a profound form of emotional openness. Vulnerability also shows up in repair and accountability. Admitting he was wrong, acknowledging that he hurt you, or expressing regret without defensiveness requires him to lower his armor. These moments reveal that the connection is more important than protecting his ego. If you pay attention, you'll see that these indirect expressions form a pattern. He's not emotionally absent, he's emotionally cautious. And yet, he keeps offering you glimpses behind the curtain. Love doesn't always arrive fully formed. Sometimes it builds through these small acts of trust, where someone lets you see them imperfectly, honestly, and without certainty, hoping you'll stay even after you've seen the parts they usually keep hidden. He includes you in his future thinking, even casually, and this is one of the clearest indicators that his feelings go beyond the present moment. When someone is only interested in decode, that's happening right now, their language stays rooted in immediacy. They talk about today, this weekend, or the next plan. But when a man is emotionally invested, the future starts to appear naturally in his thoughts, often without him realizing it. These moments are usually subtle. He might mention a place you should visit together someday, refer to an event months away as something you could attend, or speak in terms of we instead of I when discussing possibilities. These aren't promises or commitments, they're reflections of where his mind goes when he imagines what's ahead. You're already there. Casual future inclusion matters because it's unforced. He's not trying to impress you or reassure you, he's simply thinking out loud. And that's what makes it honest. People don't mentally place someone in their future unless that person feels stable, meaningful, and emotionally safe to imagine alongside them. This kind of thinking also signals emotional permanence. Even if he seems distant at times, the fact that you show up in his long-term mental landscape means you're not temporary to him. He may still be figuring things out, but his inner world has already made space for you. That's a powerful distinction. Including you in the future also shapes how he behaves in the present. He becomes more thoughtful with his actions because he's not just reacting to now, he's protecting what could be. He's less reckless with your feelings because he subconsciously understands that today's choices affect tomorrow's connection. For someone who struggles with emotional expression, future thinking is often safer than emotional declarations. Talking about feelings can feel overwhelming, but imagining shared experiences feels natural. It allows him to express attachment without putting pressure on himself to define or explain it. You may notice that he seeks your opinion on deck. Decisions that don't immediately involve you. He asks what you think, values your perspective, and considers your preferences. That's future inclusion in action. He's already integrating you into his decision-making process, which reflects emotional commitment. This doesn't mean everything is decided or guaranteed. It means that on a subconscious level, he sees you as part of his life path, not just a passing chapter. Even in moments of distance, that underlying inclusion remains. If you listen closely, these small comments and shared visions add up. They reveal that his heart is quietly planning ahead, not in grand gestures or dramatic statements, but in everyday thoughts where you naturally belong. And when someone includes you in their future without being asked, it's because their feelings have already moved beyond the present and into something deeper, steadier, and more enduring than they may be ready to admit out loud. His distance is about fear, not lack of feeling, and this distinction changes everything when you know how to see it. Most people assume that if someone pulls away, they don't care enough. But for many, distance is not a sign of indifference, it's a defense. When emotions grow stronger than someone feels equipped to handle, retreat can feel safer than exposure. Fear often shows up when the stakes rise. The more he cares, the more there is to lose. Love threatens old coping mechanisms, challenges independence, and forces vulnerability. For someone who has learned to rely on self-protection, that can be overwhelming. Instead of leaning in, they step back, not because their feelings are weak, but because they are intense. This fear can come from past experiences. Previous heartbreak, betrayal, or emotional invalidation can teach someone that closeness equals pain. When connection starts to feel real, their nervous system reacts by creating space. It's not a conscious choice, it's a reflex. And that reflex can look like emotional distance, silence, or hesitation. You'll often notice that his distance fluctuates. He pulls back, then re-engages. He becomes quiet, then thoughtful. This inconsistency is confusing, but it's also revealing. If he truly didn't care, he wouldn't come back with the same level of consideration or attention. Fear creates a push and pull dynamic, not a clean exit. Distance rooted in fear still contains care. Even while pulling away, he remains respectful. He doesn't become cruel or dismissive. He may still check in, show concern, or stay emotionally aware of you. These behaviors contradict the idea that he's uninterested.